who is going to replace Joe Biden if he steps aside, if he steps out of this race. And I have 5 potential candidates, 5 possibilities for who I think could replace Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee. So let's go through them. So let's start, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to start from, these are all names that are in contention, but we're going to go from least likely to most likely as replacements for Joe Biden. So top 5 candidates who could replace Joe Biden. The least likely one, number 5, is Bernie Sanders. Here's why I say this. Bernie Sanders has name recognition. He has serious name recognition. Out of all the people on this list, he is probably the one that has the most name recognition. Except for potentially one other. We'll get to her. But he has serious name recognition. He is beloved by the majority of the voters in the Democratic Party, not the Democratic Party elites. The officials in the Democratic Party, they fucking hate Bernie Sanders. They can't stand this guy. They do not like Bernie Sanders. They do not like Bernie Sanders. They went out of their way in 2016 to prevent Bernie Sanders from getting the nomination. Why? Because he would destroy the corporate culture of America. He would go after the corporations. And politicians on both sides, we can't have that. Oh, no. We can't let him go after our corporate donors. We got to protect them. Disgusting, man. But he is very much beloved by the people in the Democratic Party. Now, the reason why even though he has the name recognition, he's very popular in the Democratic Party. The reason why Bernie Sanders, even among the top 5 that I have on this list, the reason why he is the least likely to be the one that they choose as the replacement for Joe Biden is because of what I just said. The Democratic elite hate Bernie Sanders. They do not want him to be the nominee. They do not want him to be president because he would go after their corporate donors. That's why they did everything in their power to keep him from getting nominated in 2016 and put Hillary Clinton in there, and then Hillary Clinton ended up losing. There is a very good chance that if Bernie Sanders had won in 2016, if he had got the nomination and was the nominee and faced Trump in November, there's a very good chance that Bernie Sanders probably would have defeated Donald Trump. And here's why I say that. It's because America is not in an establishment mood. Americans in both parties hate the establishment. Americans in both parties are in a populist mood. Bernie Sanders represents the populism of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump represents the populism of the Republican Party. And the establishment, they hate that because it's a threat to their power and their money and their wealth. So even though Bernie, a lot of people would want him to be the nominee in the Democratic Party, the establishment would never let it happen. They would do some kind of underhanded backdoor shit to keep him from getting the nomination. And that's why he's probably the least likely on this list. So now we move to number 4. And this is a name that's been in contention, and that is Gretchen Whitmer. Now, Gretchen Whitmer has been a name that's been going around since the debate ended. She's a woman. The Democratic Party loves that. She's a popular Democratic governor. So a lot of people have been throwing her name out there. She does have some name recognition, but not a lot. Very little. The thing is, I think if you ask the average voter, I don't think they would know who Gretchen Whitmer was. She's really only a known figure in people that are paying attention to politics on a daily basis. Most people aren't going to know. Like if you ask somebody, who is the current governor of Michigan right now? Most people aren't going to know. Most people aren't going to care. They're not going to know it's Gretchen Whitmer. But she has been a name that's been thrown out there. But again, I think what really holds her back is the name recognition. Because here's something that you've got to understand. If they were to replace Biden right now, we've only got, this is the end of June. We've got July, we've got August, we've got September, and we've got October before we get to the elections. We've got 4 months. She doesn't have a lot of name recognition outside of political circles, outside of people that are looking at politics on a daily basis. So they have 4 months to introduce her to the country, to get that name recognition out there. That's not a lot of time, and that's time being wasted. If they want somebody to win this, it's somebody that has to go after Donald Trump, and they can't be wasting time getting somebody's name out there, getting name recognition. That's what the primaries are for. And we're long past that. So because she lacks the name recognition, and most people aren't going to know who the fuck she is, I don't think I don't think that she's going to I don't think she's going to be it. I don't think she's going to be the nominee. It would have to be an establishment of the Democrats. I agree. If we're being honest, you could put a cardboard cutout of a donkey. Democrats would still vote for it. Same goes for Republicans. That's true. That's true. But here's the thing. Because here's the thing. People that are going to vote for Biden in the Democratic Party are going to vote for Biden, regardless. People that are going to vote for Trump in the Republican Party are going to vote for Trump, regardless. But that's not who you need to get to win the election. It's the independents and it's the swing voters. It's the, for the Republicans, it's the never Trumpers. And for the Democrats, it's really a lot of young people that are just completely disinterested in Biden. So those are the people you need to go for. It's young people of color, especially in the Democratic Party. It's the never Trumpers in the Republican Party. And then it's the very few independents. And you may say, well, there's not a lot of those people. There's not. But there's just enough to sway the election. Like I said, this is going to be a very close election. And it's going to come down to the very smallest percentage of people that is going to decide this. And again, I don't think Gretchen Whitmer has the name recognition to really be a viable candidate. Maybe in 2028, but not this time around. The hour is late. Time is quickly disappearing. We're quickly approaching the election. All right, so that brings us to who I think are far more likely candidates compared to the other two. And this is where we get to one that was actually talked about for a little bit, has been talked about multiple times to run as a candidate, and that is Michelle Obama. So here's the thing. Michelle Obama is incredibly popular in the Democratic Party. And she's very, very well liked in the Democratic establishment. Her husband is part of the Democratic establishment. Her husband is part of the Democratic establishment. So she is an establishment candidate. And the thing is, unlike Gretchen Whitmer, she has name recognition. Everybody knows who Michelle Obama is. Everybody knows who Michelle Obama is. So it's not like she has to introduce herself to the country. Her president was husband for 8 years. Everybody knows who she is. Everybody knows who she is. So she has instant name recognition. She's a woman. She's a person of color. That's obviously a bonus in the Democratic Party. She's got a lot going for her when it comes to Democratic politics. She has a lot going for her. The thing is, though, does she want to be president? Does she want to be president? I don't think so. I really don't think that Michelle Obama is interested in politics as far as she herself being a candidate. Because the thing is, if she wanted to be a politician, if she wanted to be a public servant, she could have run for Senate or for the House of Representatives. And she never did. After Barack left office, she could have run. But she never did. Not necessarily for president, but just for any office she could have ran for. In a Democratic and a blue state, she would have won easily, but she didn't do it. And you have to ask why. And the reason why is because I just don't think she wants it. I don't think she wants to be a politician. I think if the Democratic Party, if the officials were to go up to her and ask her, "Hey, Michelle, will you be the replacement for Joe?" I think she would tell them, "No, I don't want it. I don't think she's interested." Now, again, could she? Yeah. And if she decided to, she'd probably get the nomination. But I don't think she wants it. I really don't. If Dems want to win people who aren't voting for Joe, offer them more free stuff, worked on the black. Well, I don't like the sentiment behind that statement, but look, people, it's like 30% of Republicans and like a vast majority of Democrats want single payer health care. So that's the majority of the country wants single payer health care. They want paid family leave. They want different things. So yes, if they were offered this stuff, they would go for it. Does that make them bad people? No, it just means we need to get caught up with the rest of the developed world. This is what they're doing in Europe. This is what they're doing in Japan. The rest of the developed world is doing this shit, and we're lagging behind. It's ridiculous. All right. So let's go on to our next candidate, candidate number 2. And these next two are the ones I think are most likely. In fact, to be honest with you, if I was a betting man, if I was to put money down on the table, I would say it's going to be one of these. If Joe Biden drops out, it's going to be one of these next two. The other ones are just potential candidates. They're out there. It could happen. But I think when we get to these next two, I think that we're in a different league, in a different category as to likelihood. And that takes us to numero dos, our second most likely candidate, and that is California Governor Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is a darling of the Democratic establishment. And here's the thing. He is slick. He is a great talker. He's a great politician. And he can debate like no other. I mean, guys, listen. Go back and rewatch the debate that he had with Ron DeSantis. There was a debate earlier this year between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom. Now, regardless of which side of the political aisle you're on, I don't think you can deny Gavin Newsom debated circles around Ron DeSantis. He made Ron DeSantis look like a chump. It was embarrassing. Now, in my opinion, he could probably do the same to Trump. Gavin Newsom's probably a much stronger debater. I know Gavin Newsom would be a stronger debater than Joe Biden. That being said, Gavin Newsom has some issues. Gavin Newsom has issues. California is a mess. It's a mess. He's not done. I mean, that's the thing. He campaigned on coming in and fixing California. He's not done that. There's been a mass exodus of people from California. That would hurt him in an election. That would definitely hurt him. And he makes a lot of good points from an economic standpoint, as far as, California, its economy does prop up a lot of other states. That's true. I mean, like he pointed out, like, what is it? Mississippi is like the poorest state in the country. I mean, this is the thing, guys. The poorest states in the country are Southern Republican states. I know. I live in one. California, in a lot of ways, is it's carrying the weight of a lot of other states, and that has affected California's economy negatively in a lot of ways. And when he made that argument against Ron DeSantis, he was right. The numbers are there. It's true. The poverty levels in red states, especially in the South, are fucking terrible compared to someplace like California. Now, that being said, California has a lot of other problems. They have a huge homeless crisis. They have they have a lot of issues. I mean, I could spend a whole live stream on California, but there's a lot of problems with California. There's a lot of problem with California that he's not fixed. He's not fixed these problems. And that's going to bring up the question, okay, Newsom, if you couldn't fix California, how can we trust you to fix the United States? How can we trust you to make positive change nationwide? And he would have a really difficult time answering that question. That being said, he is beloved by the establishment. The establishment loves Gavin Newsom. And he is a damn good politician. He's again, just from knowing how to play the game, the look, the speech, the mannerisms, he's a damn good politician. I mean, that's the thing. If you go back and you look at Barack Obama, even if you don't like Obama, everybody agreed Obama's a damn good politician. He can give a speech like nobody else. The same is true of Gavin Newsom. In fact, like when I think of politicians that are like good politicians, good campaigners, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Gavin Newsom's up there with them. And because of that, how good of a politician he is, how good of a debater he is, that's, I think, to the Democratic establishment, to the people that are going to be at the Democratic National Convention, I think that's really, really appealing. I think that's really, really appealing. And I think Gavin Newsom could be playing his cards right here because he's saying, well, we need to back Biden. We need to support Biden. So if Biden does decide to drop out and Gavin Newsom is the nominee, it's not going to look like that he was trying to undermine Biden or he was trying to, jump in and take this nomination. Like, no. Because he's being humble and he's backing Joe, it's going to look like, well, I will reluctantly do this for my party. I will reluctantly take this nomination. I'll do it because I was asked, because it's the right thing to do. And that's what I mean, guys. That's what I mean when I say he's a damn good politician. He's playing this smart. So if Biden does step down, Gavin Newsom can step in and he can make it look noble. That's smart. That's real smart. Is it fair to question that California's economy is propped up by tech companies and Hollywood headquarters are in California? That's a fair question. It is. However, does it really matter? Because that's where these companies decided to go to. That's where they just decided to headquarters. It's like saying, every state has something that they're known for. For California, it's entertainment and tech. Does that necessarily, if Apple was headquartered in, we'll use my state, Tennessee. If Apple was headquartered in Tennessee, you could say, well, Apple is propping up Tennessee's economy. Okay, yes, but so what? How is that a negative? You see what I mean? It's like, yes, California's economy is propped up by tech companies in Hollywood, but how is that a negative necessarily? These are just industries, just like furniture is an industry or oil is an industry or what have you. It's just, okay, who cares? Did they move there because they wouldn't be taxed as much? Well, California's got a lot of taxes, so I don't think that's it. I think it's really just the culture. I think they prefer the culture of California compared to the middle of the country. I really think that's it, to be honest with you. All right, so that's Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom is a likely choice. Like if I was to do a percentage here, I would say at this point, Gavin Newsom has like a 70% chance of becoming the nominee. If Biden steps down, Gavin Newsom has a 70% chance of becoming the new nominee. Now, that takes us to number one. And my number one pick, I think, has a 90% chance of becoming the nominee. And I think at this point, it ought to be fairly obvious who this is because I've not mentioned her yet. And that is Vice President Kamala Harris. If Biden steps down, if Biden steps aside, and they have to pick a new nominee, the Democratic Party, the person that I think is most likely to be that candidate, to be that nominee, and I give her a 90% chance if Biden does step aside, would be Kamala Harris. Why do I say that? Because it would be the easiest choice. At least for the establishment, it would be the easiest choice. Because think about it. Kamala Harris is a woman. She is a woman of color. And if they just sidestep her for a Gavin Newsom, that's not going to look good. That's going to create some divisions in the party. So it would make a lot of sense for them to go to Kamala Harris because she is the vice president. She is second in line to the presidency as it stands. And let's be honest here. If Joe Biden stays in the race and he somehow wins re-election, if you vote for Joe Biden in November, you are voting for President Kamala Harris because there's no way that Joe Biden's going to make it through another term. That's not going to happen. And what happens if he passes away in office? Kamala Harris becomes president. The vice president becomes the new president. If Joe Biden passes away while in office, you will get a President Harris. So don't get it twisted. If you vote for Joe Biden in November, you are casting a vote for a President Harris. That is going to happen if he wins. So using that logic, the Democratic Party may think, well, let's just go ahead and skip the trouble of all that. Let's make her the nominee now. Let's get her elected president now. It's a simple transfer. It makes sense from a certain point of view, especially from the view of the establishment, because she is a woman of color. She is the vice president. She's definitely younger than Joe, so she's not a, I wouldn't say that she's the next generation of Democrats, but she is of a younger generation of Democrats. So it would make sense to pass the baton onto her, at least to finish out another term. And it would be the easiest option. Because here's the thing, even though you have Michelle Obama, who is a woman of color, if you skip over Harris, that creates division. If you skip Harris and go straight to Michelle Obama, I think that's going to create a lot of tension and division in the party. And that would make for a very messy national convention. But if Joe Biden comes out tonight, tomorrow, this week, sometime before the convention and says, my fellow Americans, I've decided I'm going to step aside from this election, this nomination process, and I am going to throw my full support, my endorsement behind my vice president, Kamala Harris. You could see him doing that, and it would make sense. And I think in a lot of ways it would unite the party. And the establishment would love it. The establishment would love it. Now, there is one hiccup with all this, and that is, in a lot of ways, Kamala Harris is less popular than Joe Biden. When you look at the polls, Kamala Harris is not as popular as Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's not very popular. So some may argue, well, in some ways, Kamala Harris is a weaker candidate than Joe Biden to go against Donald Trump. Oh, excuse me. Let me get a sip of water. In some ways, Kamala Harris is a worse candidate, a weaker candidate to go against Donald Trump. So she does have that. But again, we're not necessarily talking about who is the best candidate to go against Donald Trump. In my opinion, I think that, honest to God, 3 of the people I talked about on this list are much better candidates, have a much better chance to defeat Donald Trump. Those being Bernie Sanders, Michelle Obama, and Gavin Newsom. Gretchen Whitmer, I just don't think she has the name recognition. I don't think there's enough there to really push her over the line to defeat Donald Trump with as little time as we have. She seems more like a more likely candidate for a 2028 election, to be honest with you. But I think Bernie, I think Michelle Obama, I think Gavin Newsom would all be stronger candidates against Trump. But as far as making this process as easy as possible, trying not to make the convention messy, trying not to create a lot of tension or division within the party, Kamala makes a lot of sense in that regards. So I think they may look at that and say, hey, let's cut our losses. Let's make it easier on ourselves. Let's just put in Kamala. And she does seem like the natural successor to Joe Biden. So I think she has a lot of things going for her. And I forget who it was this morning. I was watching Meet the Press this morning. And I forget who it was, but somebody said, listen, if they do this, if Joe Biden steps aside and somebody takes his place, it will be Kamala Harris. And I agree with that. Harris prosecuted a lot of black people for weed, so I'm not sure if Dems would vote for her. I think that the hatred for Donald Trump would overcome that, to be honest with you. But don't get me wrong, like, I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris as far as like her history as a prosecutor. Not a fan at all. She's not really that likable either. Just gonna be real with you. But if she is on paper, I think she is a stronger candidate than Biden. But again, I don't think she's as strong of a candidate as Bernie or Michelle or Gavin. I think those are all stronger candidates. But as far as making this process smoother, as far as trying to make the convention as least as far as like trying to make the convention as less chaotic as possible, she makes a lot of sense, especially if Biden steps aside and he says he's endorsing Kamala to be the nominee. I think a lot of Democrats would fall in line. And I think she would have a lot of support in the party, to be honest with you, even if she's not the strongest candidate. And again, this isn't necessarily about who is the strongest candidate to go up against Trump. That's not what this is about. This is about who is likely to be the nominee. And I think that she is likely to be the nominee. Again, her and Gavin Newsom. That's who I'm thinking. Gavin, give him a 70% chance. Kamala, 90% chance. Honestly, more like 95. My conspiratorial temperament tells me there won't be an election. There'll be an election. But there will be an election, but this is going to be a historic election. Especially if Joe Biden drops out, this election is going to be unlike anything that we have ever seen in our lifetimes. We've not seen anything like this in a very long time. I think the last time there was an open convention for the Democratic Party was back in the 1960s. This is new. This is new for us. It's not happened in a long time. But that's who I think is most likely to be the one to replace Joe Biden. All right.